House phrase, and then it says, then receiving a vision. Because never mind. Okay, now I'd like to show you a couple of other metaphors that God used to say, what does a kingdom of priests look like? What is Pekuach Nefesh? Now, Pekuach Nefesh isn't going to show up in the New Testament. That idea is being debated about 50 to 70 years before Jesus is born. So they're not talking about Pekuach Nefesh in the Old Testament. They didn't use that phrase that I know of. Maybe they did, but it's certainly not recorded anywhere. One is the whole concept of city gates. And at the risk of flopping here, this was one that my wife liked as a descriptor of love in the name of Christ. So I didn't want to miss that because I have to ride home with her. If you go to Israel and you wander around a bit in any of the old ancient cities, you notice it's a city of gates. And there are 7 major gates in the city of Jerusalem. Gates were really, really central in their culture. Not just because they're beautiful entrances, or they could be protective so you could shut the gate if there was some threat to the city, like this one's been blocked in by the Muslims, keep the Messiah out. But for other reasons as well. Now let me show you. The ancient people built their houses in piles. You'd have a city like this one. It would be destroyed, either by nature or by an enemy. And sometime later, sometimes 5 years, sometimes 1,000 years, somebody would build a new one on top on the same place. So you get these layer cakes of cities. They're called tells. This one has 17 different cities, all piled up. This is the Armageddon, the Battle of Armageddon. From the distance, they always look like a hill. Even when they're out in the open, because there are a whole bunch of cities in that pile, it looks like a hill. So the phrase, a city on a hill, comes right out of that culture. Now, what was a city on a hill? In their world, even up till Jesus' day, although the Romans were changing it, the Greeks had, and the Romans definitely were changing things. But in ancient time, only the rich and the powerful and the important to their culture lived inside the city walls. The ordinary middle-class blue-collar mostly lived in little villages clustered around the outside. Now, they were totally dependent on the city itself for water. Doesn't rain a whole lot here, so the king controls the water supply. If an enemy came, they were defenseless. But if you paid your taxes, if your son's in the army, the king would let you in the city before the enemy got there, and you might have some safety. If there was a famine, the king stored food. Remember the story of Joseph in Egypt. So to them, a city was hope and salvation and Pekuach Nefesh and love in the name of Christ. Because if there's any kind of trouble, the place I go to find help is that city on a hill. He's not simply saying you ought to be visible. It means when people look at you, they ought to say, when I'm in trouble, that's where I go. No water, I go there. Oppression, I go there. Hungry, I go there. That's the city. So city for them was very, very attractive. And Jesus' comment is, you ought to be a city on a hill. You ought to be love in the name of Christ. When people drive by the love in the name of Christ office in your village, town, city, wherever you are, they ought to say, now, when you're in trouble, that's where you go. And you ought to live in such a way that others see your care for the poor, just like the city cares for them. Does that make sense? Now, in a tell like this, there's always a gate. Most cities had only one in the ancient time because it's a weak place in the wall. And city gates were elaborate complexes. They formed, some scholars have called it the heart, the beating heart of the city. Others have called them the soul of the city. I would have guessed the town square. I would have guessed the palace. I would have guessed the temple. The answer is no. The heart and soul of an ancient city was in the gate. Now, what was the gate used for? Well, it was that cover a period of about 5,000 years. So divide 5,000 by 14, and you see the city was only captured about once every 400 years or something like that. I'm horrible at math. If I had 50 cents for every math test I failed, I'd have $6.30 at the time. Anyway, we'll leave that, just in the interest of moving on to something else. City gates and their chambers, and I'm just showing you a few gates. City gates and their chambers had several other functions. They were the town market, kind of a combination. Farmer's market, flea market, mall. The wealthy merchants in town met the public there. They don't want all these strangers wandering through the city. The farmers from the valley below brought their vegetables up, and right in the city gate, everybody traded back and forth and bought and sold. So city gates were the commercial center of the town. Second, city gates functioned as the religious center, not the temple. Oh, people came to temple on festival, but most of the time, the main god of the city had a shrine set up. I'll show you one. Geshur, this is the city of Geshur. Notice on the right, a small standing stone with a picture of Baal, the god Baal on it, and a small standing stone with places in the city gates. City gates were also the seat of government. Where does Boaz go to establish the right to marry Ruth? The elders are sitting in the city gate. In fact, so much so that where in English we say the judge sits on the bench in a courtroom, in Hebrew you say the judge sits in the gate. To this day. Why? Because that's where you came for justice. So the judge would sit in one of these little compartments you see off to the left or the right, and he would then hear the case and administer what was justice. So now the gate tells us this is what is commercially good about this city, this is what the religious core of this city is, and this is what justice is, according to us.
Would that happen with
Sanctuary, same way. Most cities that had sanctuary, the gate was the sanctuary. Same. But almost every case, more than 700, there's a cluster of small rooms. Too small to be palace or storerooms, but a whole cluster of rooms. You saw them there. Let me show you a few more examples. Here they're excavating Sha'araim. They're finding them here. That's a brand new excavation. Here you see them. Here's a view from above. Notice here's the gate. The entrance, the exit of the gate right there. And notice on both sides of the gate, a big cluster of rooms. But small rooms. They used to say guard rooms for soldiers, but it's kind of odd because it's a maze. And if you got to get your soldiers out of those rooms in a hurry, why would you have all your soldiers in rooms that were only big enough for 3 or 4 people? You'd want them in a barrack or something. I don't know. That's what scholars say. I'm not an archaeologist. Anyway, recent discovery, both archaeological and textual, have given us insight into what those rooms are about. And it revolves around what they noticed in all that small cluster of rooms. They noticed that the pottery they found was all household pottery. Plates for meals, serving bowls, cooking pots, beer mugs. Let me find my beer mug here a minute. There it is, the beer mug. Notice it strains out the hops when you pour the beer out. All small, as if they're for 3 or 4 people in a small group. And what they have discovered is that in the ancient world, they always knew this, the ancient world always has thought, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Hittites, well, as best we know, Hittite is not much. The Romans and the Greeks, life is a struggle between chaos and order. What is chaos? Chaos is famine. Chaos is flood. Chaos is drought. Chaos is disease. Chaos is war. Chaos is hatred. And order. What's order? The sun comes up. It rains. There's food. The flock is growing. Vegetables are in chaos. The Egyptians, Ispret, and Ma'at. starts the same way, remember? There's this struggle between chaos and shalom. Now, what they've discovered is that the way a city proved that its gods and its king could bring order out of chaos is they cared for the poor in the city gates. In every city gates was a city mission. And they think now that that may be true in every single city they've excavated. Did you have it there because you cared so much for the poor? There's no way to know. But you had it there because you wanted to say to the world, our God brings order out of chaos. Our King in the service of our God brings order in the midst of chaos. Because the worst chaos in their mind was the level of poverty that caused suffering. So if we can handle poverty, our King and our God is in charge. So the city gate was a billboard that announced, in this place is a God served by a king who can handle chaos and bring order. Makes sense? Let me show you something. I'll go back. Just put your things down and look at it. Really, I'll go back and I'll give you the photos. I want you to just read them a moment, because I want to make an impact. 4:14. Proverbs 22:2. Deuteronomy 14:28 and 29. And Deuteronomy 26:12. By the way, that's the last one. Yes. Let me go back to this one. Notice it says within your gates. Now in English, if this is the gate, I'm outside, yes? Now I'm within. But that's not how they thought. Notice the gate was a building. So within the gate means you're inside the gatehouse. If you go that way into the city and you leave the gatehouse, you're not in the gates anymore. A gate is a literal physical location. That's why when it says the poor who are within your gates, it does not mean the poor who live in your city. It means the poor who live in that building that serves as your gate chamber. Now, that was one of those moments, and that's fairly recent. Abraham Laan is the one who published that maybe 15 years ago. That's been pretty well. I mean, I haven't read anybody that this guy, he's really nailed it. It just struck me when I came across that and began thinking, that is what love does. Love that in Christ does, is it not? Is to mobilize churches to be cities on a hill and city gates. If you guys could create the vision in your community and in your churches and even among your staff, that you do this because that puts the God of the universe on display in all his glory. Now your work is not simply the mundane of,